The meeting of the Jackson City Schools Board of Education to order. Roll call, please.
McDonald.
Present.
Moore. Harless.
Here.
Morris. Here. Smith. All are present.
Okay. Now we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, I hope we're not getting graded on that.
All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Smith.
Yes.
Harless.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
The motion passes.
I need a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Smith.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Harless.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Now we're going to move on to public participation. We have one signed in, Mr. Pat Ball.
Thank you all for having me. I was under the impression that much of the meeting was going to be discussion of the back-to-school plan. And I just wanted to say publicly that I know that you're going to be pulled in a lot of different directions. I have the unique ability to know many of you, the administration, very close to one of your administrators. I know that you all, I know you all personally, and I know uniquely, every one of you, I believe, brings a different skill set to the table. Public education is an impossible thing. It's almost a miracle. You know, the task that you all are given to educate under normal circumstances is incredibly difficult. These circumstances make it near impossible. But what I'm going to tell you is I have confidence that the decisions will be made based on the best interests of the children. I know that from my own personal perspective, I would like to see the kids back in the classroom come fall, but you know what? You guys have information that I don't have, and I want you to know that the Ball family will support the decisions of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Pat.
And we'll move to the consent agenda. Mr. Howard.
Okay, it's recommended that the board approve the consent agenda as follows. Item A is resignations. Recommend the board accept the resignation of both high school guidance counselors, Eric Coyne, Joe Finch, as well as a JV volleyball coach, Caitlin Roberts, and Brittany Sims, a lunchroom attendant. Item B is a recommendation that the board approve a contract with Jimmy Byrne to provide special education services to some of our students. Item C is a recommendation that the board approve a remote learning plan. Item D is a recommendation that the board approve a resolution granting myself and the treasurer some additional authority in terms of spending during this pandemic. Item E is a recommendation that the board approve the engagement of Clark, Schaefer, and Hackett to assist the district in preparation of OCBOA financials, which has to do with our audits. Item F is a recommendation that the board approve a purchase for mask from Value Added. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Any items need removed for separate consideration from the board members? I need a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Morris.
Yes.
Harless.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Harless. Or McDonald, sorry.
Yes. We'll move on to new business. And Mr. Howard, you want to take over there?
Yeah. You know, I've been in education for 34 years, and these last few months have been by far the toughest during my tenure. And I want everybody to understand that the plan that I present tonight, that hopefully the board will approve, that plan could change. It could change tomorrow. It could change 3 or 4 days before school starts. So I want to make sure that everyone out there who's watching, and those of you here in attendance, prepare not only for the plan that we approve here this evening, but have a backup plan also. I mean, we've looked at 3 plans all along. The first plan, and you can call it A, B, and you can call them A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, red, green, blue, whatever you want. But the first plan is a plan that would get our kids back in school for 5 days a week. The second plan is a plan that's a hybrid or a blended learning plan where we would be in school for a couple of days a week. We would split our student body in half. Half of them would come Monday, Tuesday. Half would come on Thursday, Friday. The day in the middle of the week, Wednesday, we would have a robust cleaning arrangement that day, and our staff would report to work and work on the online piece and making sure that our students have work for the days that they're out of school. And then obviously the third option is back to where we're completely online or remote learning like we were at the end of the last school year. In trying to come up with a plan to present to the board, we surveyed all of the parents of our students and caregivers. I've met with teachers, talked with all of you board members at multiple times in the last 4 or 5 months and more here recently about a plan. And one thing that I think that we can all agree on is that we're not going to please everybody. It's impossible to do based on the results of the survey, just listening to people talk. There's no way that everyone is going to be pleased with the outcome. So let me talk a little bit about what we know about COVID and our kids. We know that it doesn't seem to affect kids to the same degree that it does the adults. About 2% of the cases of COVID are kids. The rest are adults. We know that it doesn't seem to spread amongst kids as much as it does amongst adults. But we also know that kids need to be in school for a lot of different reasons. For example, I mean, not just for education purposes. Obviously, we need to have a well-educated community, but there are a lot of different reasons that kids need to be in school. One of the things that I've been reading about a lot here lately is that the number of cases that have been reported to children's services are dramatically down. And the reason for that is because the people who are making those reports to children's services when kids are in danger and, you know, little Johnny comes to school and he's got a big welt on the side of his head and somebody's able to talk to him and find out that, you know, he got slapped last night by his dad or stepdad or whatever. Teachers, bus drivers, school employees are the ones that are making those reports. We're not getting to see those kids. We don't know how much of that stuff's going on in the homes now that's not being reported. So a lot of kids are at risk because of that. We also have the food situation. We've got a lot of kids and parents that rely on the school. Kids get 2 meals a day when they come to school. I know that, you know, the last 3 months there of the year, whenever we didn't have school, that we did have a pretty good plan. You know, we had 5 or 6 different sites that Mr. Hemsley had set up, and we had, you know, our cooks and bus drivers and aides were taking care of that. But we didn't reach every kid, I have no doubt. We couldn't go out and go door to door to make sure that people got that, but we did the best we could. But I still would contend that there's probably kids who didn't get food during that time. So, you know, that's another reason. And then there are a lot of just social emotional issues. Kids are social creatures. I mean, they need to be around other kids. It's important for them. And I read an article the other day about the suicide rate. Now, this article wasn't necessarily talking just about students, but just in general, since this pandemic has started. The suicide rate throughout the country is way up now. So kids need emotional help, and we can't see that because we don't have them here in our care. So there's a lot of reasons for us to try to figure out a way to do everything that we can to try to get our kids back in school. Now, I realize that the parents, a lot of parents are obviously concerned about the education of their kids. They need to be here to learn. We know that what we did during the last 3 months of the year worked for some kids, didn't work for a lot of kids. It's not the best way to learn. We did the best we could under the circumstances. And I also know that for a lot of our parents out there, that they need the schools to be open so that they can go to work and support their families. And they need to have a place where they know that their kids are going to go and they're going to be well taken care of, they're going to be safe, they're going to be able to eat, and they're going to get a good education while that takes place. But having said all that, the one thing that we need to take into consideration that you don't ever hear when you're reading articles or looking on social media is that, what about the staff? These are all adults. These are people that work for the schools that are at risk, more so than the kids. And, we have to make sure that we can staff our buildings. We have a lot of staff, and I'm sure every school district does, where there are people who have unique circumstances. There are people who have different kinds of situations, either health-wise with themselves or even in their homes. Maybe they're caring for their elderly parents in their homes, and they're concerned about contracting this and taking it back home, or they have a youngster at home that's not of school age yet that is high risk. But people don't tend to talk about that. It's that, hey, we need to get kids back in school, and I think everybody can agree on that. The best situation is to have our students in school. But we've got to be able to look at it as a school leadership team, a district leadership team here, and come up with a way, if that's possible, to get our kids back in school as much as possible, as safely as possible, for not only our students, but our staff and the community. One of the things that we have to take into consideration is we have to be able to have substitute teachers. I checked today. Right now we have 36 subs on the list. And you say, well, that's a pretty good bit. But a lot of those people, they work for us, they work for Wellston, they work for Oak Hill, they may work for Benton County. So those people, we're sharing all the same subs. They might have, 35 or 40 subs on their list, but 15 or 20 of them are the same people. I'm also concerned about those people. A lot of those people that are subs are retired teachers who, wanted something to do a few days here and there, and I wonder if those people are going to be willing to continue to be subs and put themselves potentially at risk for the amount of money that a substitute teacher makes. So that's something that I hope everybody understands, that if our plan changes going forward, it can be for a lot of reasons, and this could be a reason, because we've got to make sure that we have subs so that we can staff the building. Same thing for bus drivers, for example. We've got to have people to be able to go out and pick the kids up and get them to and from school. And if our people don't feel safe, then I don't know that they're going to want to come to work on a regular basis and put themselves in that position. So we have a duty to try to come up with a plan to get kids back in school. A plan that will mitigate the risk the best we possibly can. And I want to be clear on this. We're never going to eliminate all of the risk. There's a chance that anybody that comes back to school in any building, not just here, but anywhere in the United States, probably in the world for that matter, could contract this. There's a slight chance of that. But there's also a chance that in every single thing that we do in life, there's always a chance that something bad could happen. Every time we get in a car and we drive somewhere, There could be something fatal happen. We know that. But we weigh the risk versus the reward. We don't just not ever go anywhere or not ever get in our car and drive anywhere because we could get in a car wreck. We've decided that, it's worth that risk because we need to be able to do certain things. So I kind of look at this the same way. We need to get our kids back in school. We need to figure out a way that what the risks are and how we can mitigate those risks as best as possible. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to take all the data that I've been able to get from our staff, from the community, from talking to individual board members, watching countless hours about this every day for the last 3 or 4 months, and come up with a plan that I think we can get our kids back in school for 5 days a week. So I'm going to present a plan now, and I'll go over it with you, and then we can have some discussion about that plan and the things that you like, you don't like, whatever. As I said, our plan, or my plan, that I'm going to ask the board to approve tonight will be that we get kids back in school for 5 days a week. We're going to add a lot of health and safety precautions, and I'll talk about some of those. We may limit or eliminate field trips. We'll take a look at those, and again, this plan is going to constantly be changing depending upon the situation. One big thing that people are going to ask about, and I know a lot of people aren't necessarily going to be happy about this because I saw that from the results of the survey, but things have changed even since that survey was put out and people answered it. Frankly, I think it's worse right now than it was 4 weeks ago. I think we could all agree with that. So we're going to talk about masks a little bit. Every student that rides a Jackson bus will wear a mask on the bus, regardless of what grade they're in. We're going to pass out the mask. They'll get one when they get on the bus. If they don't ride a bus to school, they'll get a mask whenever they get to the school. Our primary students, grades PK through 2, they'll wear a mask on the bus. They will wear a mask when they're in the hallway and if they're in common areas. Honestly, I don't think that'll be very much time at all during the day. And I will say this, I talked with our special education director today, Mr. Lowe, and they've been screening pre-K students for the last couple of days. We screened 40 kids in the last 2 days. These are 3 and 4-year-olds, and over 80% of those 3 and 4-year-olds came into the screening with a mask on and didn't have any trouble, weren't trying to rip it off or crying or anything. They can do this. Kids can do this. And this is something that we need to do to be able to keep our kids, our staff, and our community safe. Grades 3 through 12, they will wear a mask when they're changing classes, if they're in the hallways, in the common areas, and when physical distancing in the classroom is not possible. There may be some of those circumstances where a class is too large, we can't spread them out enough. In those situations, they will wear a mask. So there may be times where kids are wearing masks one period, the next period they're not wearing a mask. With regard to the classroom structure, we're going to give up some good academic practices in order to achieve more safety. As most of you know, at our elementary buildings, pretty much, 1 and 2, they might have, grades 1 and 2, they might have a couple of different teachers. They'll have one teacher for reading, another teacher for math. Our grades 3, 4, and 5 have been completely departmentalized over the last few years, several years, where they will have 3 or 4 different teachers during the day. One of the things that we're going to give up in order to provide more safety and security for our staff and for our students is we're going to be self-contained, almost exclusively self-contained, K through 5. Now, there might be a couple of situations where there might be a change depending upon if a student has an IEP and has to be taken out of the classroom to be given services and those kind of things. But for the most part, grades kindergarten through 5 will be self-contained. And for those of you who, I apologize for using educational jargon, that means they're going to have that one teacher pretty much all day long that will be responsible for all their learning, all the subjects. And then if we do get in a situation where later on we have to go to an online format or remote format, our teachers will be dealing with 20 parents trying to help students as opposed to, at the elementary level, 60 or 70 students. Our high school and our middle school students, they will continue to switch classes. It's a whole different animal whenever you're dealing there because people have certifications where they can't necessarily teach multiple subject areas. It's a lot different at the elementary. We will expect our principals, especially at the high school and the middle school levels, to develop a locker schedule. One of the things that we're going to encourage and allow, we're going to allow our students to bring book bags to school. Now, they still need to be of the clear color, still need to be of the mesh where we can see through them, but carry those book bags to the classes where that way they don't have to go to their lockers nearly as often. Because if you're familiar with, and I don't know if it's that way here or not at the high school, Mr. Haynes, but I know at the middle school they got lockers on the top, lockers on the bottom, so you could have people right on top of each other. So we want to try to eliminate that as much as possible. So they'll come up with a locker schedule where people can only go to the lockers during certain times. We're going to try to utilize our outside areas as much as possible. Again, that's something that you can't necessarily depend on because it might rain for 4 days in a row. We might not have any rain for 2 weeks. But when possible, we will encourage our teachers to utilize our outside areas, to take kids outside, have your class outside for the day, especially some of our larger classes. As far as the hygiene and health, when kids come into a classroom, when they're switching classes, now again, the elementary, it's going to be pretty much self-contained, so there won't be really switching going on. But at the middle school and the high school, when the students come into the classroom, they will take a sanitary wipe and they'll wipe down their area where they're going to be seated after the kids that were sitting there the previous period. And they will do that each period. Hand sanitizing and washing of the hands will be monitored a lot and will be observed frequently. We will be doing rigorous cleaning all throughout the day and sanitizing. We are going to also add additional personnel to be able to do those things because we can't put that off on our daytime custodians. They've got things that they have to do during their normal work schedule. So we'll probably have to employ some additional personnel, at least during the school day, that can go around and do things, wiping down doorknobs, wiping down handrails, going in bathrooms and sanitizing, all of those kind of things, and just on a continual basis. By the time they get done making one pass through the school, it'll be time to start back over again. We're going to encourage students to bring a water bottle filled from home, and that will cut down on the use of water fountains. I was a little bit concerned about the water fountains, but I had a conversation with the health director, and he didn't seem to think that would be a big issue for us. He's more concerned not about where the water actually comes out at, but we need to make sure that where kids put their hands, he says, is far more important. I know we've all seen little kids almost put their mouth on that thing, it seems like, but apparently that's not as big of an issue as where their hands are. So I still think that we don't want kids using them any more than possible. So bring a water bottle, fill it up in the morning. Maybe you only have to go to the water fountain one time during the day instead of multiple times. Transportation, we're going to provide transportation. We've taken a look at the routes and the number of kids that ride. I don't think that we're going to be in a situation where we should never have more than 2 kids in a seat. When possible, we're going to encourage our drivers to seat family members together. Most of them will be much smaller than that. There won't be that many kids on the bus. So that's something that we're really emphasizing with our drivers. We're going to have our drivers load the buses from back to front. So the first stop, kids will go straight to the back of the bus. And the reason for that is then they're not passing each other as much in the aisleways. So the days of, the biggest, toughest kid automatically getting in the back seat won't happen anymore, because we'll be basically seating them in the order that they get on the bus. And then we will unload front to back, again, keeping kids from passing each other any more than what we have to. Our buses will be disinfected between routes. So when they run their morning route, before they go home or go to their secondary job, they will go disinfect their bus. And then they'll start the evening route. When the evening route's over, they will disinfect their bus prior to the next morning's route. The first seat behind the driver on both sides will be left empty. We won't put anyone that close to our driver. Food. At the elementary level, breakfast will be grab and go. The teachers will keep track of what students grabbed a breakfast as they went through. They'll eat that in the classroom. We were doing some of that already, not necessarily at every grade level, but I know we were already doing some of that at the elementary level. But now that'll be universal at the elementary level. Lunches will be eaten in the cafeteria, possibly in the gym, some to provide proper social distancing if we need to do so. I know our elementary people are working on their lunch schedules, and we may, instead of eating 2 grades at a time, be able to reduce it to where they're eating 1 grade at a time. We've got 65 kids in the cafeteria instead of 130. So it is possible, though, that they may be eating, we may move some tables over to the cafeteria that's adjacent, well, in 2 out of the 3 elementary cases, adjacent to the cafeteria. Technology, all of our students will have their own individual Chromebook, so they won't have to be sharing computers. One other thing that I'm thinking about doing, and this just came to me today. Actually, one of the principals brought it up and sent it to me, and I think it's a really good idea. We've kind of done this to some degree in the past. In the past, we used to, like K through 2, have a staggered start. What I mean by that is one third of our kindergarten, first and second graders came on the first day. Another third came on the second day. The final third came on the third day, and then on the fourth day, everybody came. And I'm thinking that maybe we should take a look at a staggered start, because we start school on a Wednesday. And there were some good points from this email from one of my principals today, that if we start on Wednesday and half of our kids come on Wednesday and the other half come on Thursday, what that does is it gives us less numbers. It gives us opportunity to hold some meetings. Principals can have meetings with the kids without having so many of them there. It will give our parents the opportunity to see where they're supposed to go in terms of dropping kids off and all that without having a million of them coming through there at one time. And probably more importantly than that, the most important thing is that if we decide to go to a blended model, it will already give us the half that's coming on which days. So I think that that's something that, that's not a definite, but it's something that I want to give some more consideration to. And again, that will only be the first 2 days of school. And that will just be so that our teachers and our staff can be able to meet more with students and go over a lot of things in a smaller group setting. So that would be Wednesday, Thursday, then on Friday, they all come. That's pretty much the plan that I have in my head and actually on writing, or down in writing, and that I would like to roll out and recommend that the board approve this evening. And we can, one other thing let me point out here real quick. because I know this is going to come up. What about these little kids and wearing their masks? They're going to lose them. They're going to be laying on the floor, all that. Saw a really cool video. I don't know if it was on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, but we're going to purchase a lanyard for every student, 2,400 students. And the way this works is the lanyard hooks onto the strap of the mask. So I put my mask on. I've got my lanyard on. So if I'm walking down the hallway, I can put my mask on. When I get back to my room, if I don't have to wear my mask in my room anymore, I just unhook it, and it's just hanging. It's not laying on the floor. Nobody's stepping on it. I've got it with me all the time. And then each day, they would keep their lanyard with them. And each day when they get their new mask, they would hook it on there, and that way they've got it all the time. So at this time, any questions, comments, discussion from the board? Alice?
On the lanyards, will there be additional lanyards at each building so if the children forget to bring them from home? Or are they going to be encouraged to put them in their book bag and then bring it back the next day?
We're gonna put the responsibility on them. We'll give you one, and after that, you're on your own with it.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm.
We talked about online courses. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
Yes, we will have an online program for those parents who decide that, for whatever reason, that you don't want to send your kids to school just yet. That's still in the works. I would encourage you to, between now and August 1st, if you've decided, and maybe you haven't yet, but if you've decided that you're not going to have your kid come back to school, then you need to contact your building and let them know so that we can properly plan as we go forward. That's still in the planning phase because we don't know how much of that we're going to need. So there will be an online method for those people who choose to go that route as opposed to coming back to school.
And that will be a part of Jackson City Schools,
Yes.
not just an online course out there somewhere else. This is our kids, our school.
It'll be our kids. It may not be taught by our people,
Right.
but they will still be Jackson City School students, still be able to participate in activities.
That was my next question. They'll participate in sports, activities, extracurricular, band, anything else that, FFA.
That's true. Now, I will say this, and maybe that if I would question, but to answer the question, yes. But it makes me question that if you don't want your child to come to school because you're afraid, I'm not sure if you're going to want your kid to participate in extracurricular activities because, to me, the exposure is there one way or another. But to answer your question, yes, they would be eligible. Ms. Smith?
I had a call from Mr. Rafferty today. He apparently had heard a rumor around town or somewhere that there was not going to be a football or sports program this year. Will you address that situation, please?
Yes. There's all kind of rumors going around, looking at the NCAA, the college level, a lot of the college teams, even the big boys, the Big Ten is now just playing a league schedule. The Ivy League has canceled all fall sports. So I think that when people see that happening at the collegiate level and even in the pros, there's a lot of talk about whether they're going to be able to have it. The natural assumption is that it's going to filter down to us. Right now, we don't know anything other than it's still a go. I think that, I will tell you this, that I read something today that one of the principals sent me in Athens. Actually, Athens City and Portsmouth City, both their councils last night enacted a mask policy. And you're starting to see that all over the place where cities and towns are enacting mask policies where people, if you're out in public or inside a public building, you have to wear a mask. It's the law in those places. And in that article, it talked about Athens City Schools, and they had a board meeting last night, and one of the things that they were talking about and kicking around is that they may decide to cancel their fall sports season. And if once that starts to happen, Athens County now has, in 2 days, they had more cases than they had in 3.5 months. And I'm starting to see it's like almost squeezing in on us. I mean, you've got Scioto County, it's really running rampant there. I got a son who's a respiratory therapist and works in a hospital down there, and he's telling me every day, man, Dad, there's just tons of people coming in and all kind of people testing positive. You've got Athens County, the same thing. To the north of us, in Pickaway County, I think they're one of the counties that are now on the red alert where they have to wear a mask. So it's almost like it's starting to squeeze us in, and I wonder how long it's going to be before it gets here, or we do things to keep it from getting here.
Well, on that note, Mr. Howard, with that being said, I mean, there's a good possibility that this plan that we're going to vote on tonight could change at our next board meeting. There's a good possibility of that. And with that being said, could you speak a little to parents and caregivers that may have to come to the school or inside the building, and what the expectations are for them?
Yeah, we're going to ask that we want to keep down the traffic as much as possible, because we know it's more of an issue for adults that are spreading it. We would ask that our parents don't come into the building any more than possible. I mean, we can't say you can't ever come into the building, because there's going to be times where we will have to have you come into the building possibly. We're going to offer as much as possible. Our administrators will offer the opportunity for you to do things virtually with us. Speak to us on the phone if you need to. If it's a meeting, maybe you can sit in on a Zoom meeting. One of the things that I would like to see us do is possibly hold some meetings for professional development for our parents. If you want to learn how to be in a Zoom meeting, our people can offer to teach those kind of things. So I think that we're going to try to do some of that if some of our parents are interested. But as a general rule, we want our people to pull up, let your kids out in the morning, move on. In the evening, unless there's some reason, I don't know what it would be, you don't need to be coming into the building. And if you are in a situation as a parent where you're coming into the building, you need to do a self-check. Do you have a temperature? Don't come in the building if you have a temperature. Obviously, if you've got any of the symptoms of COVID, you don't want to have a temperature. We don't need you to have a temperature. And also, you need to check your students in the morning before they get on the bus, before you bring them. If they've got a temperature, if they've got any of the symptoms of COVID, keep them home. We don't want you to come to school. Don't worry about the truant officer and attendance and stuff. This is bigger than that. We'll worry about that. We realize that some of those things are going to have to be some grace with that. We're not going to be trying to take you to jail for keeping your kid home because they're sick. We want you to keep your child home if they're sick.
I'm curious to know, how did your administrators respond to this plan?
I think they're all fully supportive. I mean, they realize that our kids need to be in school. I don't know that I told another administrator in another district today that no two people are going to come up with the exact same plan. All of us sitting here, if you were all to design the plan, it's not going to be exactly like what I've laid out here for you. I think it'd probably be close in a lot of cases, but some things are going to be different. And I think that, the one good thing about our particular board is that we all get along really well. And one board member said this the other day, and I think this is really true here. And I think, Mr. Moore, it might have been you, that there's going to be things that we don't necessarily like about the plan. And, in a perfect world, it's not something that we would like. But I can live with it. And given all the circumstances and all the things that we've got to try to juggle here, I think that's what we have to try to look at. What's the saying, Mr. Alzer? Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. We've got a good plan here. We're never going to have a perfect plan. So don't let perfect be the enemy of something that's good. We're doing the best that we possibly can here.
Have you seen anything from our neighboring schools? Are they as far along as we are?
I think, well, Oak Hill actually put their plan out a couple of days ago because their board meeting this month was prior to ours. Wellston had a board meeting last night. I think they had a lot of discussion about it. I think Ms. Bach is probably going to put a plan out here in the next couple of days because I think they had a lot of discussion last night, but their plan is not officially out. And the one thing I think that you'll get from all superintendents is that this is what we know today. You know, tomorrow, Friday, next week could be totally different. So as parents, you know, people keep saying, when are you going to release something? We need to know. We need to know. Well, we're doing that. Hopefully, we're going to vote here in a little bit and approve a plan. But you need to understand that I can't emphasize enough that this could potentially change 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 times between now and the time that school starts. So I would encourage you to have backup plans. I mean, right now, I'd like for us to be in school 5 days a week. But if this thing keeps getting worse, it's possible that we could go to that hybrid model. I'm going to ask my principals, most of them are here this evening, that in the next few days, they need to come up with the division of their building so that we know what students are going to come what days if we go to the hybrid model, and so that we can potentially do this staggered start. And then, of course, we will have a plan to be able to go all online. It would help us greatly if we end up having to change and go to completely online. I would really hope that we would get some time with our students. If you remember last year, it happened at the drop of a hat. Basically, I think he told us on Thursday, you can't come back to school Monday. So we only had a day or something to prepare kids for it. When we come back, I think the first thing that our teachers need to do is start talking to our students about, if we have to go online, here's what we're going to do. We never got that opportunity the last time, and I think we lost some kids along the way there. If we can get that opportunity to be able to talk to kids about how we're going to deliver instruction if we have to go remote, I think that would benefit us a lot.
Ms. Harless?
Yeah, I have a question. We did a survey to the parents, and we had a great response.
Yes.
So one of my questions is, what if, because we had a lot of parents say my kid will not wear a mask. We had a lot say that they won't come unless they do wear a mask. So what if we have kids, staff, that decide they just refuse to wear a mask?
Well, the governor said that staff members will wear a mask, and our staff members are going to wear a mask. I'm glad you brought that up because I think I left that off when I was going through things. Our staff members will be wearing a mask when they are coming into the building, when they're in the hallways, when they're in the commons areas, and when they're in their classroom if appropriate social distancing can't be maintained. If it can, and they've got enough room between them and the first students in the front row, they won't have to wear them. But if that can't be achieved, then they will be wearing them. But if Billy raises his hand and you got to go back to his desk, you're going to have to. That's why I would encourage you to have something like this where you can just stick it on and walk back and talk to him. Or if you're going to have to train your kids to, don't just walk up to my desk, you're going to have to raise your hand so that I can call upon you, so that I can be ready and have my mask on whenever you get up here. So if our staff refuses to wear them, they're not going to be working here. If students don't wear them, then they're going to have to look at the online model and go that route.
Mr. Howard, you mentioned it when you had the meeting with the teachers last week, that they would have an option of wearing a mask or a shield. Is that correct?
That is correct. We would allow our staff to wear either the shield, because some prefer that. You can see in some classes, it's going to be tough to teach if you've got a mask on, because you need to be able to see. It'd be hard to teach Spanish if you can't see the instructor's lips, some music things. So they will have the option of wearing a shield or a mask.
Is the distance still 6 foot, or are we going to go with 3 foot like the pediatrics?
The American Association of Pediatrics recommends at least 3 feet. The governors and the state was saying proper social distancing is 6 feet. So our instruction to our staff will be, if they don't have 6 feet, then they need to wear a mask.
I've had some questions from parents about latchkey and success. Will there be?
We hope. That's all going to be determined by staff availability. You know, I don't know how many of our people are going to decide that, you know, they don't really want to do that anymore. But our goal will be to provide that service because we know it's important for our people to be able to have somewhere to take their kids. So to answer that, we hope that we'll be able to have latchkey and success.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
At the elementary level, recess, yes, no? I mean,
Good.
I know some of these kids, my son, not having interaction with kids, not running around playing, it's been rough.
Yeah, recess, and that's another one of the reasons that kids need to be in school. I mean, they need to be out doing things. We will have recess at the elementary level, and they won't be wearing it. They won't have to be outside with a mask on. They can be outside. We'll have people out there. We won't let them just congregate, you know, in a bunched up method. But they will have recess outside when possible, as long, you know, it's not weather permitting, of course.
The other question I had was also in the elementary level. You had talked about K-5 being contained. You know, I know we have teachers that may have taught reading, second grade reading for 20 years. Now they're going to be expected to teach math. Are you looking at department head kind of deals where maybe the math teacher helps the typical reading teacher? Because resources-wise, they may not have access to those other subjects because they haven't taught them.
Very good question. And in our one of our staff meetings the other day, one of our younger teachers who actually had done a year in another state brought up an idea that we're going to implement. Each of those teachers are used to being the expert in that subject area at that grade level. So, for example, you know, in 4th or 5th grade, if I'm the expert in math, Ms. Harless is the expert in reading, Mr. Moore is the expert in science or social studies, I'm going to prepare the lesson plans for math. I'm going to give them to the other two teachers. They will do the instruction of their students based on my lesson plans because I'm the expert and I know what students need to know. And they will do likewise with me. I'll still just have my 20 students and I'll deliver the instruction to those 20. And I will deliver my math, her reading, and his science or social studies. So, good question.
I think everybody has this question. What if we get a positive case?
Good question. And I don't know that it's necessarily what if. I mean, it's probably going to happen at some point in time in some building. And that's another reason why I think that the mask wearing is important. Because in talking with the health director, one of the things that we talked about was, if we get a positive case, we don't necessarily need to shut down the whole district, even a particular building. We will look at contact tracing. And so, for example, that's another reason why we want to do the self-contained piece. Let's say we have Southview Elementary, a second grader test positive. There may be 20 other kids in that class and that teacher that have been affected. But because they've not been out throughout the building for long periods of time with each other, it may be such that those 20 kids and that one teacher are quarantined. If we continue to allow the departmentalization to happen, like say we used to do or we're doing last year, even at the 4th or 5th grade, you could potentially have that one student. Now that student we've had 4 different teachers, or 3 or 4 teachers that have had that one student. So we could potentially be quarantining 3 or 4 teachers instead of just the one. Now the high school and the middle school is a little obviously trickier because you've got, you know, you could have 8 different classes during the day. And so that one student could potentially have impacted 8 different teachers and 15 different kids first period, and second period he goes to another class and there's 14 other kids in there that weren't in the first period, and the list goes on and on. But from what I understand from talking to the health director here and listening to the health director from Gallia County the other day, we had a meeting with a bunch of superintendents and the Gallia County health director was there. If students are wearing masks in those situations, then it could be that only the student who has the positive case is quarantined and the others are not because they were wearing masks. So I think we'll have to look at it case by case, but it's potentially, it could be a whole class, it could be multiple classes, it could be, if we get enough of them, obviously, it could be the building. If you remember back to last year when we had the flu, well, I'm not sure it was the flu now, it's probably COVID, who knows, but I don't know, it was back in February. In my office, and most of you board members were in there, you know, I had the big screen up, and I was charting every day what our attendance was. And I was looking every single day at what our attendance rate was at each building and throughout the district. And then at some point, you know, I had to make a decision that we've got too many absences. And I think at that time I said, you know, when we get down to, if there's 25% of our students that are out, we're going out for a few days till this thing clears up. So would be a point in time where we would have to potentially shut down the whole district, but it's not going to be if one person tests positive. Or if that's the case, we probably shouldn't even go back because it's probably going to happen.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Howard, if that happens, the governor's already turned over local control to us. So if we get a certain percentage and you decide you have to make a decision to close schools, it will be a decision between the local district and the local health director. Is that correct?
Yes. When I did that last year, I contacted Kevin and said, hey, we're going to have to, you know, we've got 25% of our kids out. We need to stay out of the building for 2 or 3 days. Got the weekend coming up. We can do a thorough cleaning and try to bring the kids back on Monday and see how it goes. So we'll be working closely with the county health director. He'll have a lot of say-so in those kind of things that you were just talking about.
Okay, just going a little further with that, say we do quarantine a class. How is teaching going to be done? How's that going to be handled then?
Well, one of the things that if a teacher's quarantined, and we've already been talking about, you know, the online model, I think that the teacher can still do their lessons from home. They can teach the class from home. So our students will be able to still have their instructor, but have the person deliver that from their home.
And that is different than the online courses that they can
Yes.
take? Okay.
Yes, that would be our instructor and not.
Okay.
And if we go down permanently, we don't get those kids that's on the other virtual learning? They don't come back to us, or they stay there, or?
That's something that I've still got to work out with the virtual company. What some districts are doing, they are requiring their students that go online. If we're open 5 days a week, but we provide an option for our kids whose parents don't want them to come back and go online, some districts are requiring that they stay online for a semester, half of the year. Some districts are saying you got to stay online for a 9-week grading period. And then there's some that are saying, no, you can come back at any time. We are currently working out the details with the company to see when we would allow those students to be able to come back.
And is that the same if kids start school? If they want to go to the online after they've come in person?
Yeah, they can leave at any time and then go online. If they come and decide that it's not, you know, they don't think it's as safe as what it needs to be, then they would have the option to go online.
Do you have a feel about how many people might do that? I know it's kind of a guess, but.
I've seen, I had one superintendent tell me today that one of the surveys that he had said about 20% of his population would be going online, but I don't know if that's, you know, I think it's easy to say that until, you know, it's easy to say that right now, and, you know, a week before school starts or a couple days before school starts, the kids may decide that they still want to be around their friends, and maybe that decision changes. And maybe, you know, we have changed it by then and said we're not even coming back. I don't know.
You think you'll have a higher percentage there at the higher grade levels?
Of people that go online? Potentially, because I think that for one thing, parents need childcare, and parents don't need someone to watch their high school students. So for that reason, you know, it might lend itself more to high school students deciding to take advantage of that. One of the things that I've also developed, and this will be online, assuming the board approves this, is I have a one-page synopsis of the plan, basically, because I know people are not going to read a lot of this stuff, the time that we've spent putting this together. I also have a one-page Q&A that people will be able to look at on our website, and it's basically a lot of the questions that you guys have asked here tonight, that parents, if they have a question, look at the Q&A. It may be answered right there for you, and you don't have to reach out to us. You're more than welcome to reach out to us if you would like, but I think this Q&A are some of the questions that we thought that most people might have, and it's answered there. Then we also have a document that is, I called it our reopening plan expectations, and this is the one that frankly most people are probably not going to read, but it has a list of parent expectations, has a list of the student expectations, the expectations of our administrators, the expectations of our teachers, expectations of our custodians, expectations of our bus drivers, our nurses, technology people, our cafeteria staff, and our office staff, with a disclaimer at the very end that says, this is not an exhaustive list of expectations, and these expectations may change at any time depending upon the severity of COVID-19 as it relates to our students and staff. And that is about 4 pages of information there. So I figure that most people are going to want to look at the one-page document. If they got a question, they can glance at the Q&A. There's probably, 15 or 20 questions there that are going to be the most commonly asked questions, I think.
I think masks, I'll go back to that.
Yeah.
Did we mention that we are purchasing masks for all students and there will be no brought-in masks from home?
I don't think I did. I'm glad you brought that up. And that is on the Q&A. One of the questions, because we knew that would be a question, is the district providing masks for students? And the answer is yes. Students will be issued a mask when they get on the bus in the morning or upon entering the building. And that will be their mask for the entire day for when it needs to be used. I want to make sure that everybody understands that we're not saying that kids are going to be wearing a mask from 7 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock. Most of it, they're not going to be wearing a mask that often at all. There may be times where they do have to wear it during a class period. But for a lot of our students, they will wear the mask when they come in the building, when they're in the hallways, and that might pretty much be it. It'll depend on their class schedule and the number of students that they have in their class. But then the next question is, can my child wear a mask that I have purchased or made? And the answer to that is no. All students will wear a school-issued mask. And the reason for that, I thought long and hard about this because, and somebody's going to say, well, the masks are going to be too big for the little kids. We've ordered pediatric masks, and we have masks for our, juniors and seniors and our bigger kids. The reason that I want the district to provide the mask is a couple of things. Number one, if the masks are the cloth mask and we allow people to bring their own in, a couple of things. Number one, you could start this whole fashion thing, and some kids already deal with this to a large enough degree anyway. They can't afford to buy the fancy designer clothes that a lot of the kids can. The last thing I want to do is put middle school or high school kids in a situation where something else for them to have to worry about and not want to come to school because Kim's wearing a Gucci mask with little beads and diamonds on it, and Miss Strawser's got one of these that we pass out here at school. I don't want to put our kids in that situation. I want everybody to have the same mask. Secondly, from a hygiene perspective, unfortunately, there will be some parents that if we gave them a cloth mask or if we allow them to use their own, that they may never get washed. And it might be more dangerous to wear a mask that hadn't been washed for 2 months than it would be to get COVID. So we don't want to have our kids in a situation where they're wearing a bandana from home that hasn't been washed in 3 weeks. It's a big expenditure for the district. You just approved an expenditure there for over $100,000 for masks. You know, we don't, that's not something that we would have to do. Again, it's something that I think is best for the safety of our kids, that everybody get a brand new one every single day.
Phil, if you, what happens if you have a teacher who doesn't feel safe and, for whatever reason, and they want the kids to wear masks at all times in their class? Do they have the say-so to do that in their class?
That's a good question. I've actually had that already come up. And here's my answer to that. That teacher in that classroom is at risk. We know that. I'm going to allow that teacher the leeway if they don't feel comfortable with the kids in that class. And it's been brought up to me twice, and both of them have been high school or middle school situations. I don't think it'll be an issue at the elementary level. But the email that I got from the teacher was that this teacher may be able to, because of the class size, to properly social distance. It's kind of a small class, might be able to get 6 feet in between, but I don't feel comfortable because, you know, I've got situations either with myself or at home. I'm going to allow that teacher to make that decision that the students need to be wearing the mask. And here's why. I need a teacher to come to work every day, and I need them to feel like that they're safe. And there's no harm being done to the kid by saying, I need you to wear your mask. And so if that's what it takes to be able to have that teacher feel confident that they've got, you know, that we're looking out for them and we're looking out for their best interests as well, then they can make that call as the classroom teacher. Good question.
Any other questions? Need to go ahead and have a motion then on the approval plan that we've just been discussing.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Harless,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. And again, I want to reiterate that people need to understand that this could be changing at any time as we move forward. But we were getting from people, we need to know. And so this is what we know as of Tuesday night, July 14th.
All right, we move on to the financial report, treasurer's report, Mrs. Strauser.
Thank you. The item A is a motion to approve the regular financial statement report for the period ending June 30th, 2020.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Smith,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Harless,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Item B is to approve the amended certificate for fiscal year 21.
I need a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Smith,
Yes.
Harless,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
And item C is the appropriations resolution to go along with the certificate for FY '21.
Yeah, need a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Smith,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Harless,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. We got closing items now. Are there any closing items or comments that board members would like to make? Seeing
I'd just
none.
like to thank Phil and the rest of the board working so hard on this, and this is the toughest decision you can ever come up with. It's been tough for me personally. I think there's going to be a positive, and I pray daily that no one gets too sick or worse than that. So it's a very tough decision. As a contractor, I'm not a health director, and put in a spot to try to do that, it's been tough.
I'd like to just thank all of the staff that's here tonight. The interest that we've gotten from surveys from parents, surveys from our staff, the meetings we held for the staff, we had great attendance. So I appreciate that, and we know that your jobs are going to be different this year, and it's not going to be normal, but I want to thank you in advance for doing what you can to keep our kids and yourself safe.
And I'd like to second that and also thank the members of staff who contacted me and we discussed this some in detail. I appreciate that, and I'm still open if anybody does would like to discuss it. I'm available, or just email me.
For me, they've said it all. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate you.
I just want to say that, as Mr. Moore said, this is a tough decision. Obviously, we're all on the same page that we think that our kids need to be back in school. I just want everybody, please trust that we're going to monitor this constantly, and if things start looking like they're going south, we're going to make the decision to change that to keep everyone safe, both the students, staff, teachers, everyone. Your health is extremely important to us. The kids' health is extremely important to us.
Let me just say that also, Dr. Morse, you got 2 kids in the school. I got 1 still in the school. You got a wife that's a staff member. All of us have different connections throughout the school, so it's a really, really tough decision for us to be in, but we believe that the rewards of our students being in school for 5 days a week as opposed to the risk of not, that's why we've arrived at this decision. So.
If we have no other information or discussion, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for coming out this evening. I appreciate it.